Hello everyone, welcome to Come Sit at My Table and welcome to Subscriber Sunday. Now because it's Sunday, we are doing another recipe that was mailed to us by one of our subscribers. Today's recipe comes from Linda Cable in West Valley City, Utah. Now Linda sent more than one. In fact, she sent 3 recipes. She sent a waffle recipe, a homemade syrup recipe, and those both look delicious, and I am going to try them. But she also sent a cinnamon chip scone recipe. And you know I love scones. So that's what Melissa and I are going to make. She sent a really nice letter talking about how her mom did dinner and what they had growing up, and it's just a really nice letter. We've enjoyed it. But today we're going to make cinnamon chip scones. So here's Linda's recipe. Let's talk about what we're going to use today to make these scones. We're going to start with 3 cups of flour, all-purpose flour. You use whatever brand you want. This just happens to be what I usually use. We're going to use 1/3 cup of sugar. And that's not a lot of sugar, but scones are not supposed to be a very sweet item. They're supposed to be more like a biscuit. So only 1/3 cup of sugar. Then we're going to use 1/2 teaspoon of salt. We're going to use 2 1/2 teaspoons of baking powder, and we're going to use 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. Now, the next ingredient is butter. Linda uses cold butter that she cuts into the dry ingredients. And I think she says that she normally uses a pastry cutter to cut her butter in. And I've done that many times. But I have found that it's easier for me to grate in frozen butter. So we're going to use 3/4 of a cup, which is 1 1/2 sticks of butter. If you don't have frozen butter, no problem. Just use cold butter and cut it into your flour mixture, either with a pastry cutter or 2 knives. If you have frozen butter and a grater, you can do it the way I'm going to today. The next thing we're going to use is 1 cup of whole fat buttermilk. Please don't use low fat or fat-free buttermilk. You need whole fat buttermilk. And then the last thing we're going to use is a 10-ounce bag of cinnamon chips. And don't you know those are going to be fabulous? Wow.
I will add the great flavor.
Do we know anybody in this house who loves cinnamon?
That would be me.
Oh my gosh, you all. She loves cinnamon candles. She loves cinnamon candy. She loves cinnamon food. It doesn't matter. She loves cinnamon.
Truth is, I picked this recipe out and said, I really think we should do this one.
I like cinnamon. I've never turned down something cinnamon, but I'm telling you, Melissa absolutely loves cinnamon. Okay, so we're just going to take our dry ingredients and put them together. So I put my sugar in. I'm going to put in my salt, baking powder, and baking soda. We just want to make sure all of that is in. I'm just going to try to scrape that plate off the best I can because we don't want to miss any of that. All right. And then we're just going to stir those together. Melissa, I'm just going to get rid of this out of the way so that we have room to work here. I'm just going to take a fork and kind of stir all of that together. I just want to get the sugar, the salt, the baking powder, the baking soda all incorporated with our flour. And now we're going to grate in our butter. So I'm going to do this back-handed because I want you to be able to see. So I'm going to lock this down on my counter. I'm going to tip my bowl just a little bit so I can get the butter to fly in there. And I'm going to use some, even though that's frozen, I'm going to use some that I kept in the freezer just to make sure it was really cold. And I'm just going to put that in and start grating it. And you can see that because it's frozen, it just grates it beautifully. Look at that. Doesn't that do a nice job? and it just incorporates with your flour really well because it's so small. I'm going to rake that out of there and just pull it over so that I can get the rest of that in there. And that's the rest of that stick. Now I'm going to do about half of the next stick because we need 3/4 of a cup. That's 1.5 sticks. So in we go. And I'm going to say that that's about half right there. Okay. So I'm going to get rid of that. Now I'm just going to unlock my grater and make sure I get all that butter right in there. I don't want to leave any of that in my grater. I want that all in my flour. Okay, perfect. Got a few little pieces right there. Now all I'm going to do is just toss that together. See how we're making sure that all that butter is coated with the flour mixture? You just want to toss it around. You want to do this while it's still frozen, because once it starts to thaw, then it would start sticking together and you'd have big clumps. If you did not have frozen butter and you cut in your butter, it's still going to look just like this. I'm going to hold this up, Melissa, so they can see. Can you see the little chunks of butter in there? And that's what it should look like even if you don't use a grater. If you're just cutting it in with a pastry cutter or 2 knives, you should see little chunks of butter in the flour. Now the next thing we're going to do is add our buttermilk. And I'm just going to make a little well here in the middle. Add my buttermilk. Hang on a minute, I need a little scraper here. Forgot about that. Gotta get this buttermilk out of here. Because buttermilk is moisture and flavor. But we need the moisture in this to hold this together, to pull it all together. So I don't want to leave any of that buttermilk out. And if you feel like, after you've gotten your buttermilk stirred in, if you feel like it's a little dry, stir in another tablespoon or 2 of buttermilk. It won't hurt anything. I wouldn't put a lot in. You don't want it swimming. You don't want it to be liquidy. But it won't hurt to put in another tablespoon or 2 just to help pull it together. This should be very similar to biscuit dough. So just take your time. Work all that flour in. Make sure you get all the way down to the bottom, all the way around the sides. We have friends who have gotten a scone out somewhere at a bakery or whatever, and they're like, it just wasn't very sweet. It didn't really taste like a pastry. Well, that's because it's not. A scone is more like a biscuit, a flavored biscuit. But they are delicious for breakfast, for a snack item, anything like that. All right, it's looking pretty good. And I know what some of you are thinking. It looks really crumbly. It doesn't look like it's mixed. You're right. It does look crumbly, but that's the way it's going to look until we get in there and start working it together. And we're going to have to pour this out onto a pastry mat, or if you don't have a pastry mat, just do it right on your counter. Melissa, can you link a pastry mat to this video?
Yes, I've done that before.
Okay, so if you don't have a pastry mat and want one, Melissa will put a link where you can order a pastry mat. It'll probably show up on the screen while I'm using the pastry mat, but there will be a link. And you could probably also link one of these graters if somebody would like one of those. Okay. So there's our chips, and I'm just going to go ahead and stir those in. You can wait and do this after you get your mix out on your countertop, but I like to go ahead and get them stirred in so that they're in with the flour mixture. Okay, now we're going to take a break here for just a second while I clean this up. I want to get all this cleaned off the counter, and I'm going to put out my pastry mat, but we'll be back that fast. Okay, I have my pastry mat out. We're ready to dump this onto the pastry mat and work it into a disc. I do want to tell you that when I was getting ready to dump it, I realized it was just a little dry. So I did add about 2 tablespoons more of buttermilk to the mix. You'll just have to fill it out and see what you think. If you feel like yours needs it, add another tablespoon or 2. A lot of it really depends on the flour. You know, sometimes you need it, sometimes you don't. So just do it the way you think. You make sure it's what you think it should be. All right. Now, I know what you're thinking. Well, that doesn't look like there's any way that's going to come together into a disc. Well, that's because we haven't worked it yet. And you just have to start pressing and working it and folding. And that's going to take just a little bit of work. So don't give up on it. You'll see how crumbly this is down there. You see that? We have to work all that in. So just keep working it. Get all that dry into it. Keep pressing it. And it will eventually come into a disc. It's just going to take a little bit. Look at all this dry right here. See how dry that is? We just want to pick it up, put it right in there. Fold it in together, keep pressing, keep working it. Just keep making it into a disc. All this little runaway dry stuff, gather it up, put it in there. All right, that's what I'm going to keep doing until we get to a disc. It took about, I don't know, a minute and a half to get this to pull into a cohesive dough and form it into a disc. It does take just a little bit of work, but I mean, a minute and a half, no big deal. Now, let me tell you that Linda did mention in her recipe, and I think I understand this correctly, she divides her dough into fourths and does 4 circles, 4 discs, and then cuts them into scones. But we like big scones.
She makes mini ones.
She makes mini scones, but we like big scones, and we do have friends coming over this morning. So I just put it all into one big disc, and I'm gonna cut them. I'm just gonna use my bench scraper. I don't know what in the world I'd do without this bench scraper. I use it a lot. Do we want to do, I think we want to do 6. Or do we want to do 8s? 8s are gonna be really small. But you know what? They might be easier to handle. I think I am going to do 8. So I'm just going to cut it in half, cut that half in half, and then cut each of those in half. And that will give me 8 scones. And that's plenty big enough, I believe. Okay. Now, I've mentioned this before when I've made scones. A lot of people separate these and put them all over their baking sheet. I don't do that. I keep mine together because I feel like they rise more if they're together. So I will scoop these up if I can keep them together without falling apart here. Let me get another spatula right here. That will help me a little bit. And I'm going to do half of them and move them over. And then I'll move the other half. But I just feel like by keeping them together and not separating them, it makes them rise up instead of spread out. And I really like a tall scone. So I'll leave mine together. You do it the way you want to. If you want to spread yours out on your baking sheet, that's fine. I do cover mine with parchment paper because I feel like that keeps them from sticking. So you can do that too, or you can just put them directly on your baking sheet. Okay, so I have them all together here. Just going to make sure that they're in there together. And Linda does mention brushing the top with melted butter and sprinkling sugar on it. So that's what we're going to do. Melissa, I'm going to walk around you and grab our sparkling sugar. You do not have to have sparkling sugar. You can just use regular sugar. But look how pretty that sugar is. And it just makes the top of your baked goods really, really sparkle.
Gives it a nice crunch.
It does. So I'm just gonna brush one and sprinkle it with a ton of sparkling sugar. I might do 2 at a time. But you wanna do it while that butter is wet so that that sugar sticks really well. And honestly, I know it looks like I'm putting a lot on there, but it's really not that much because it will dissolve a little as it bakes. You'll still see the sparkling sugar on there, but it does kind of dissolve some. So don't be afraid to put it on there. And if you don't want to do this, you don't have to. You can just leave them plain. You can use regular sugar if you'd like. Either is fine. Linda does mention that occasionally she does a glaze made of powdered sugar and milk on hers. So you could do that. Listen, you could do both. You want to put sparkling sugar and a glaze on? You go for it.
Or neither.
Or neither.
Got lots of
Yeah.
options.
We've ordered scones in bakeries and places that didn't have anything on top of it. They were just plain. So you do it the way you like it. If you think you would like the sparkling sugar, then, oh, I didn't mean to dip that in there. I meant to dip it in the butter. Okay. Now we're going into the oven. It is a 425 degree preheated oven, and these only bake for 10 to 12 minutes. So it doesn't take long. All right, we're going to go in. We'll be back in just a few minutes. It was probably because I made my scones larger, but they did take a few extra minutes to bake to make the center done. Now that's part of the problem of leaving them together as a disc. If you separate them, you don't have to worry so much about the center getting done. But I just like to leave them together as a disc. So that's what I did. We had to bake them a few extra minutes just to get that middle done. All right, we're going to do a taste test because our friends are supposed to be here any minute. So let's get this. And you can see that sugar sparkling on top.
Gosh, these smell so good. I knew I was going to love these.
Says the cinnamon queen. All right, babe. Oh, look at that crunchy on top. Mmm.
I was going to try to zoom in on that.
All right, babe. Here's your bite. Hope it's not too hot. I should have blown on it for you.
Oh, it's fine.
Okay.
Oh, my goodness. That's so wonderful.
Winner, winner.
Definitely.
Thank you, Linda. All right. Take my bite. Oh my goodness.
Pat and Bruce better hurry. I might not be able to wait for them.
Those are fabulous. Oh my gosh, those cinnamon chips are perfect. I might have a new favorite scone. Every time I try a new scone, I say, oh, I have a new favorite. But this might just be my new favorite scone. Man, that's good. Now, a lot of you will want that with a mug of coffee or a cup of tea. But I will enjoy that with a big glass of cold milk. Delicious. Linda, you hit this one out of the park, girl. All right. Thank you so much for watching our video. We would appreciate if you'd go right below this video and click that like button. If you've never clicked the subscribe button before, that's right below the video, we invite you to click that. It's totally free, just joins you to our channel. Right beside of it's a little notification bell. If you click it, you'll see the word all. You click it, YouTube will notify you every time we put up a new video. Also, right below the video, you'll see a description box. It'll have the title of these scones in there. It'll say cinnamon chip scones. If you click anywhere in that box, it will expand. Melissa always puts the written recipe right there for you. Also, our contact information's under that recipe. And there's a link to our Amazon store where you can order our cookbook. And at the bottom, there's a place for you to leave a comment. We love reading your comments. So feel free to go down there and leave us a comment. We are anxious to hear from you. Thank you again for watching our video. We do appreciate it. We want you to remember that you are always welcome to come sit at my table. Have a great day.